Welcome back. OX Research Live. It's Friday, the 15th of August. I'm joined by two esteemed guests today, and we should have, assuming he does not completely rug me, one more to join us later. But Tolks, Ian, how are you gentlemen doing on this wonderful Friday morning?
Just begging Sailor to bid. But other than that, pretty good. Some interesting PA today. But yeah,
Sailor's struggling to compete with Tom Lee's size. They're having a little bit of a size battle, huh?
Yeah, going band for band. But yeah, I mean, you can even see it in the. I'm sure Dan will talk about it too, but just the volumes traded, and then I mean the ETF flows too. Like it's been kind of it's been pretty wild how ETH has flipped BTC and kind of a sizable amount the past week, 2 weeks. It's been interesting. I don't think the market, especially Bitcoin, is the biggest fan of it. But you kind of deal with what you're dealt. There he is. I was wondering. I was like, that's a nice new picture you got there today.
There's our gentleman. How are you doing, Ian?
I'm doing well.
Glad to see your face.
So happy to be here.
You must be at an undisclosed location. This is not the typical.
It's not my typical shitty lighting apartment.
looks like downtown Ohio.
It's close. It's close.
Welcome to downtown Ohio, man. It's great out here. I'll tell you what.
It certainly is. That's
quietly become, even though I think it's been too long and that was too small of a meme, that's like become one of my favorite memes to toss out there now. Mostly because I think it flies over people's heads that what is being said there.
That there's just a downtown Ohio. There's no cities. There's just one downtown.
As if there's only
the
one
entire state.
One downtown. It's a great reference. Yeah, we all live in downtown Ohio. If you don't live in downtown Ohio, then you live out in the farms. That's pretty much all there is to Ohio.
Downtown Ohio or the coastal elites. Those are your two options.
It's cornfields or downtown. So it's good though. You can make a living, honest work out here. Before we get anywhere, I do want to say a quick thanks to Aptos for sponsoring today's stream. We'll hear about them more later, as well as DAS London coming later this year in October. Reminder for folks out there that want to join us at DAS, hear from different institutions and great speakers, and people from Blockworks, of course, and Blockworks adjacent. You can get £100. I love saying getting £100 off. It's hilarious. Get £100 off tickets. Find links at the DAS site. Use code 0x100 instead of 0x10, which it typically is for 10%. It is £100. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Is that why prices are down, because we're quoting things in pounds now?
Yeah, we're doing all charts relative to pounds now. No more USD. I think Fanes is going to struggle if we force him to do pounds on all the charts, though. He's already been beaten down enough.
Yeah, to begin with.
Awesome. Well, I guess I didn't mention him, but Dan Smith will be joining us a little bit later, and then we'll get into some discussion. He's very amped up, I'll say. he's been talking about Tom Lee's girth in the order book. I don't know why he's choosing that terminology, but BMNR, they've been doing crazy things, buying a ton of ETH, selling a ton of BMNR, as they do. Outside of that, I guess I'd be curious to know, because I don't usually get to ask this question. What are you guys looking at? What are you interested in the markets today? Are there any like new apps, new coins, old coins that are piquing your interest? Like what do we have our eye on right now?
I think the obvious attention suck right now is just all of the DATs. But I think outside of that, like when you look into like protocol specific things, anyone who has any sort of meaningful business model is now like looking at buybacks, which is cool because I mean obviously like the second order effect of like the DATs is like the prices on some of these tokens running up pretty drastically. Like ETH is quite close to like its all-time high. And then as a result, you saw yesterday, like the Lido founder kind of come on in their community call and talk about like buybacks and kind of like start giving some direction there. And then some other protocols over on Solana, obviously like Jito, they've been looking at buybacks. Pump is obviously doing buybacks. They're very, very aligned on those. So I think that's kind of the main thing right now is kind of getting a lot of the attention is stuff like that. Obviously, we've had like a couple more launch pads come to market. Like now, Light is live, so that's one. But yeah, I think these are kind of some of the obvious things that are getting a lot of the attention. Then Athena, of course, I think is another one. They're seeing new all-time highs in their stablecoin supply. And yeah, so I think that's kind of everything I'm seeing. But I'm kind of curious what you guys are looking at.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I mean, it's pretty refreshing to see that the buybacks and revenue are one of like the core focuses of the market. We even saw Uni. I mean, I for as long as I've really been in like seriously in crypto, I can remember like Uni fee switch coming in 6 months for the past half decade now. And I think that there's been some progress on that front too. I didn't read the entirety of their forum post in the DAO, but it seems like that could be coming. And then Mantle, the ETH2 that works pretty closely with integrated pretty closely with Bybit. They had an announcement this morning too. That I don't have the details exactly on hand, but the token was up. They alluded to buybacks and more token utility. So just kind of that trend of I mean, there's endless tokens out there, and you have to do something to stand out. And buybacks are really all the revenue that can be made. Some of it distributed back to token. Like it's the core focus of the market. And I mean, you see it with Hype approached all-time highs again last night. Down a little bit from there this morning. But you can see the market clearly rewards these revenue producing tokens that put a good chunk, if not, in Pump and Hype's case, like, almost all of everything back into the token. So that's kind of the core focus there. And then I'd say, Base is still pretty interesting too. There's still some good action, good coins on there. Arrow's up, I want to say, like 50-60% this week. As Coinbase kind of rolled out the initial launch of the DEX integration natively in Coinbase. So trying to have some more focus there. But yeah, those are kind of the main things. And then obviously, the DATs, everybody's got that frenzy. Kind of seems like the market is a little exhausted of it right now. Bitcoin especially after Saylor in the last earnings call announced that they wouldn't be selling any more MSTR to fund BTC buys. So it'd be interesting to see kind of what the size of his buys going forward are. I think there's been some pretty good research out there that suggests that it'll be pretty significantly smaller than what it has been, over the past 3+ years. So I think that's kind of a large part of what the market is kind of digesting now.
Yeah, I like a lot of those comments on the Saylor piece. They made the specific outline for only selling, making more ATM offerings, assuming their premium to MNAV is I think it was if it's above 2.5.
I think it was
if
two
I'm
and a
not
half. Yeah.
mistaken.
Two
So
and a half.
yeah, which I'd have
But
to
that hasn't happened in like
go.
3
Yeah,
years. I think
they've
it's
not
been
been
like
there in a
3
long
years.
time. So it's kind of, yeah, you're basically assuming that they're turning off that spigot. It seems like the point, like the purpose is to try to fund all future like cash for BTC purchases through like these other vehicles, like the Stretch, Stride, Stark, etc. That they've been running. And the Stretch offering was pretty big. I don't know if that completed. I'd have to go and look at the specific details, but I know that they like upsized that total raise amount for Stretch a few times, up into maybe like the 4 to 6 billion range. So he is still attracting quite sizable amounts of capital, like through these additional vehicles. But yeah, I guess there's a question mark there of if they can replace the amount of cash that they were able to shore up through ATMs, like via these other, you know, perpetual preferreds and like, you know, other different like kind of like yield focused offerings that he's playing around with. And that's a question mark, like if it's going to impact his relentless BTC bid. So we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. I do think the mantle thing you brought up, I didn't look at this one until just now, but it seems interesting that like, I don't know. I feel like Bybit had maybe not really been doing anything with Mantle for a long time. That kind of was just like another one of those L2s. There wasn't really any reason to do anything over there unless maybe you were anticipating some kind of like airdrop, like maybe go farm some rewards, this, that, or the other thing. But it seems like maybe now this current shift, they're calling it chartering the Mantle 2.0 vision, new advisors, new frontiers, and what's next. Seems like they're going after like the Coinbase base, and kind of like Binance BNB chain play where, you know, you promote assets and liquidity and applications from like the chain on the actual centralized exchange, which has, you know, it's worked out pretty well for Binance. It's worked out pretty well for Coinbase. It could potentially work for Bybit, though I imagine like, you know, the further we go down that list, like Kraken and Inc. is another one of these as well, trying to get into that domain. It seems like it becomes like a tougher and tougher challenge, the, you know, maybe the smaller you are, as an exchange, and like, you know, the kind of the sway that you have over your customers and their assets. But I guess the big thing that they can do is like, you know, if it's holding their assets on the chain and then like offering up different promotions and activities to do there, that can drive some activity, as we've seen with like, if anyone followed Binance and Pancake Swap activity when they did the alpha campaign for trading volume, that sparked quite a bit of activity. We know it was directly incentivized, but still, it pumped the numbers. So it may be interesting though. Like, I'd wonder if you guys have any thoughts on this. Like, we know that Bybit is also exploring like their DEX on Solana. It almost seemed like they were like abandoning that chain vision with Mantle. So it seems interesting to like see that deployment and then see them coming back and like try to re-strengthen and bolster back around Mantle. I don't know if anyone's going to have thoughts here, because I can't imagine where, you know, in the West, we're probably not Bybit users, and may not really be like the target customer here for like the Mantle chain per se.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't really have any deep constructive thoughts on Mantle. It's been a while since I've toyed around over there. When I was playing that Jordy Puff game, you know, Puff the Dragon and that token, that was that was a good time. But it's been a while now. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think they're doing the right thing to potentially acquire, you know, users and volume and get some activity there. But anything kind of L2 wise outside of base, really, like I just want to remain marginally bearish and kind of just, you know, wait for it to kind of gain momentum and prove itself before trying to, you know, front run something there. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, more or less the same. Don't have too much else on that. I guess like kind of related to those topics though. Did you see what OKX did with their tokens that were in their treasury?
No.
They
What are the
they
details on
burned
this?
about
Was it like 3
26
billion?
billion. I think it was like 26 billion. Well, like in US dollar amount at least or something. Or maybe that's like the amount after the burn. I don't know. if you just do the simple FC space OXP and check out that chart, I mean, it's insane.
That money,
But
that
yeah, I
money
think
was
that kind of
definitely
falls into
real,
that. Yeah,
right?
yeah, of
If you're
course. I
willing to
mean,
burn 20 billion of it, it was definitely real.
I mean the money that if yeah, I mean if the treasury money is fake, the real money is definitely more real now.
The chart looks
So
good
that's
though,
a good
right?
move. Yeah, I mean, how could you miss that one, right?
Yeah, it feels I feel like movements like that they remind me of like crypto.com and the Crow token. Like they did that was a while ago when they burned like 70% of the supply or something, which they own so much of it that it's it's kind of like, okay, great, you reduced so much of the supply that was basically all of yours to begin with, and then they later reissued it, which is a bit hilarious. I feel like that's got to be the first like kind of high profile case of that happening, at least in the crypto market so far. The OKB, I mean, it smells kind of similar. I'm kind of outside the details here, just hearing it secondhand, but um, it's interesting to hear a big burn from that, from like an exchange about their own token that they supply control. But
I
I mean,
remember
like,
that the Chronos, when they reissued that, I remember just laughing so hard. Like it's the most crypto thing in the world to be like, yeah, we're gonna burn like, a couple billion of this token, and then 6 months, a year later, be like, well, actually, turns out we're gonna reissue it.
yeah, it almost makes you think they didn't really think that hard about it. Like if they needed the tokens for something, then they could have I don't know, they've got the validators as well. They could have like upped their commission rate or something and then used the rewards to fund stuff rather than like reissue 70% of supply. It feels a bit silly, but regardless, maybe you mentioned the Launchpad, and I think we should talk about those. Let's get some updated thoughts on Bonk and Pump. But before we do so, I need to do a quick shout out for somebody for the sponsor of today's show, Aptos. Bitcoin DeFi is heating up on Aptos. With nearly 400 million in BTC assets on chain, Aptos users can now earn yield on their Bitcoin via Echo ABTC and OKX XBTC without the typical bridge risks and high fees. Thanks again to Aptos for sponsoring today's stream. Let's get back to it. What was I saying? Let's talk Launchpads. Ian, you mentioned it. There's been excitement, one, around buybacks. Pump has been doing, they've upped their buybacks, right? They're doing basically 100%. They've had maybe some weird outlier days where they did like 200% seemingly, but broadly it seems like they've bumped up and they're just doing 100% of recent revenues have just been getting shoved into the token. And the other big thing, and I'll pull up some data, is that we've seen a complete like re-rotation back from bonk launches and trading to pump. Like the bonk fund took over everything for like a month and gave it all back pretty abruptly. So I don't know if you guys had any deeper thoughts here. Like we discussed this quite a bit of like, I don't know, thinking maybe there's some additional hidden incentives behind the scenes, like they were getting paid out to creators to go launch on bonk, or just, I don't know, they were doing a good job of like, pumping up the coins in the ecosystem. You guys have any thoughts here? Has it made you revise any of your thoughts or your thesis around pump and the pump token as of late?
I think they kind of answered all the open things that people were asking. It's like, are you actually doing buybacks? Be official about it. They made a dashboard, they made it public. I think they got way better on comms. And I think that was kind of reflected back not only in like their token price itself, but kind of all relevant metrics to the protocol as well. Like it looks like there's the stone cold bottom on like tokens that were graduated, or tokens that were graduating was hit. And then like some other kind of unique KPIs for what they're looking for. And so it's like, so why exactly did the the bonk creators drop off and like the bonk users drop off, who knows? I mean, obviously, I also think the buybacks of like organic tokens on the pump fund community is probably helping that, probably getting people back over there. But again, like I do think that there's like kind of a weird area of the meme coin supply chain, the sloppy industrial complex, which is just like kind of hard to pin down on exactly what's happening and why it's happening. And then it's just kind of reflected back in the loudest ways possible on like crypto Twitter. But like overall, I mean, the metrics have moved in the right direction. The price has moved in the right direction. I don't think we'll ever see another interview as bad as the Elon Fred guy interview. I think that was the bottom for Elon interviews. So yeah, I think everything's looking much better than it was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Tolks, you have thoughts?
Yeah.
I know you had some positions in Pump, not Bonk.
Yeah, I closed this out earlier this morning. Finally, we got within about 10% of break even. But yeah, I had the bright idea of like I think it was like Sunday evening. I was like, I'm just gonna twop into some massive pump and hype longs, and I did up until Wednesday night, and then BTC went to new highs, and I was like, this is incredible. These are gonna rip. And then Thursday morning, but yeah, we battled back today. We took a decent little loss, but it could have been much worse. But anyway, I mean, the thesis there was just, as Ian said, the comms improve. They're putting 100% back into the token. I think the comparisons to hype are good, maybe narrative wise, but as far as kind of the moat and just I don't know, ability to kind of stick around and maintain. I heavily favor hype in that direction, but you can see that the comparisons are there. And I mean, obviously you can pull up the hype chart and look, it's a little different because I don't know, it was like the immaculate launch. But you can kind of see when they're putting 100% of, revenue in there and they're making, 1 to 2 to 3, sometimes 4 million a day, like you start analyzing that out. And as long as, BTC and the broad market plays along, I think earlier this week, Pump was kind of trading as one of the strongest tokens on everything that we talked about finally flipping. And it's kind of just at, the broad markets, whatever BTC kind of wants to do now, it's kind of beholden to that. But I do think the team has done the right things and moving in the right direction. We'll see kind of where their volumes settle if we do kind of go into a sustained, downward choppy trend for a month or two. We'll see what those metrics look like and what the buybacks stay at. But I think as far as, from launch to the bottom to that interview, like everything has been cleaned up pretty well. So I'll be interested to see kind of how Pump bounces whenever we bottom in this, kind of disgusting downward price action we have going on now. As I'm watching some charts live, it's not looking great. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, hype has been really strong this week. Again, up until this morning, Pump was strong, early this week, and I think it was kind of a sign to the market that, they're moving in the right direction. You can also say that, the token was down 60-70% from launch. Like, there's some type of mean reversion that happens at some point, but I think they're doing everything kind of within their powers for the time being. So it's good to see.
Yeah, I think a lot of that makes sense. The data point the chart that I want to pull up and just kind of look at is this these two very clean crosses of the top token creators across Launch Lab, which includes Bonk Fun, of course. It's built on top of Radium's Launch Lab, and then Pump Fun, and then the Meteora creators are on here as well, but smaller numbers for those Launchpads. But yeah, there was just a very clean cross of activity of basically a bunch of the largest creators flipping from Pump to Bonk Fun, essentially like right at the beginning of July. And this looks like a massive run up, but it basically just like encompassed the normal amount of tokens that were being created on Pump Fun were now being created on Bonk Fun. And then we saw that grind down right here at the beginning of August now, almost exactly a month later. and cross back the opposite direction. And now all of that token creation is being done on Pump again. It's interesting. I don't know. There's don't have any like we said, there's no explicit details out there publicly around like if maybe these teams are working with some of like the mass like slop token creators, offering them like additional deals on top of just like what the platform kind of offers. Because obviously, you know, if you're a token creator, you get some benefits already potentially, right? If you're sniping some of the supply and then maybe selling it, and then also there's rewards for the token creator in terms of like a percentage of the fees from the trading volume on both of these platforms, as well as now Ian mentioned, you know, Pump and Alon have said that they're gonna, you know, buy some of the, you know, best, most organic, you know, coins in the Pump ecosystem. So that's potentially another like additional incentive there. If you think as a creator you can maybe hit some of those coins and get some additional buyback, and that fuels more volume, and then that fuels like your profits in running this token creation operation. Maybe that additionally fueled them to swap the other way. But I don't know, this seems like such a drastic change. It kind of would make you think that they're at least interacting with some of these mass creators to some extent, to see such a clean swap, because it wouldn't necessarily make sense to me, like with all of these being open permissionless platforms, that you wouldn't just like be launching coins wherever, whenever, assuming the kind of profit incentive played out for you as the token creator, token distributor. But yeah, I think to the Pump point as well, I kind of want to talk about the buyback and the revenue piece. Buybacks have become a really big thing. I mean, even in DATs, right? Launch a DAT and then buy back the coin, the underlying thing, and that gets people excited. But while selling your shares, at least in crypto, a revenue generating business that then buys back its own token has become like the exciting, like most kind of supported. I don't want to call it a narrative. There's like actual value there, right? If you generate revenue and buy back the token, then coin goes up and to the right. But I guess the interesting thing with Pump is that it seemed like they did not want to allocate so much. Like, I don't know if these were just like kind of hushed rumors, but you know, initially it was thought that like 25% would be for the buyback. When we actually like rubber hit the road, they kind of just like discretionarily like shoved, you know, several million into the coin, just like in the open market. And then, you know, in the past couple of weeks, they've kind of shifted that over to just doing like a seemingly pretty explicit, like 100% recent revenue is going straight into the token. I find that a very interesting shift. Obviously, like it, you know, they really wanted to like get, you know, retake control of the narrative and like kind of get their brand power back to where it was, with Bonk maybe swamping them out a little bit. It makes me wonder where things go from here. But given how much cash they've raised, I guess there's not too much risk in just shoving all of the ongoing revenue into the coin, right? I mean, when you've got $1 billion and some change from the recent raises, like they have they don't, it's not like they necessarily need per se, you know, the 1 or 2 million a day or whatever that they generate from platform revenue. They've got plenty of cash on hand to go, and if it's M&A, if it's other deals, if it's expand the team, it's not really a risk for them. But longer term, I think it opens up a question mark of like, are they committed to this like 100% forever? And do you have, is there an event in the future where they ratchet that back down for some reason, and then that becomes like a downside risk?
Yeah, those are all good points. One of the things I noticed, like when they did initially announce that they were going to start using some funds to like buy creator tokens, there was like a pretty sharp sell-off right there. Just because I think like people were just starting to get comfortable with the idea of like all revenue going back towards buybacks. Like it recovered, like it was, but it was just like kind of one of those things that like showed up in the chart like quite immediately. So like, you know, whatever that's worth. But in general, I think people like buybacks because there's a lot of ways to kind of be like, hey, like we're really like, you know, focused on the project and all these things. But it's like, I think the ultimate aligner across all communities is the price going up, and like showing full alignment of like, hey, like we're really putting all of the revenue back into the chart, is just kind of the way it's manifested for Pump at least. And so far, I think the reaction has been good there. I think obviously like there are some analogies to be drawn to Hyperliquid as well, but these are both trading focused apps, so I think naturally they're going to attract a lot of like users that are really okay with taking risk and want to see the team take a similar amount of risk with them, if that makes sense. And like I think that's why you see like a lot stronger pressure for apps like these to do buybacks as opposed to apps that maybe are a little bit more on the infra side or anything else like that. Just because it's like the token holders, let's say, or the users, maybe aren't as degen. Is kind of like the simplest way of putting it, I guess. But yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think we covered most. I think what is interesting is kind of just how long because they haven't, as far as my knowledge, they haven't outlined, kind of the time frame that this is staying, right? It's just kind of like this is what's happening now. And even on their fee website, it says they currently expect to use substantially all net revenue for strategic investments, and then they may modify or discontinue those plans at any time. The pump token does not represent a right to revenues or any other distribution. So I remember when that website first launched, like that was kind of, I don't know, it's it's rational somewhat, mostly for them, but just kind of having it on there, like I don't know, maybe that hangs over them a little bit, just because you can buy 90%, 97% of the token for a couple weeks, but eventually the market will start kind of demanding more clarity. So I think it'll be interesting when we get there, or to see the price reaction if there is a day, whether it's this weekend or next week or a month from now, where say they use 20% of revenue just kind of out of the blue. It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens there. So like I said, I mean they've done the right things over the past few weeks, and we'll see moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean they definitely have like, I mean this is the thing, they have the brand and the capital to make a splash within the space, like on chain or kind of like within crypto. $1 billion plus in capital, like I don't know, we've only seen like a very small acquisition to this point. So if they've got more plans in that ballpark, or like a massive expansion of like kind of the product offering, because maybe they can hire more people and have a more stacked team to build out some additional product, whatever it may be. We'll have to kind of weigh the upside from like maybe expanding the product, or new potential revenue streams, et cetera, with kind of what they're doing and the clarity around the token and the buybacks and where that goes, because it's kind of TBD. Maybe along those lines, something that I find interesting is that, Ian, I think you mentioned Light, but like another Launchpad enters the scene. Heavendex Light, the token, like they did an ICO last week, I want to say, for the Light token. It was kind of a interesting one. I think we may have covered it in the OX Research newsletter, but basically just like kind of an open-ended ICO, and ICOs for some of these like on-chain protocols and teams and like doing later rounds have kind of been coming back lately. So I guess that wasn't too surprising in and of itself. But what I do find interesting is that, like, I don't know, we're at like the nth Launchpad already. So it is interesting to kind of see this thing get off the ground. I haven't looked at the valuation, but I think it's in like the mid 8 figures range at the moment, at least the kind of the platform token is. And again, they have committed to like a 100% buyback model as well. What's interesting is that, like, if you look back maybe a year ago, there were plenty of like attempted kind of like pump fund or just like Launchpad copies, but with buyback, rev share, etc. There were a bunch of these that tried to do that, like GoFundMe. I'm sure you could think of like 10 more. There was like Flaunchy on Base, I want to say, that were all going after the same design, and like basically none of them went anywhere. But just the notes from Heaven, like they launched the actual Launchpad and like Dex itself the other day and did over 2,500 launches, 30 million in volume in that first day, and have already generated, at least from the launch of the Launchpad, 200,000 generated for the flywheel. Not to be an annualizer, but that would be a significant amount of revenue at their current market cap if you kind of were able to sustain that amount, on a forward basis. Not saying, maybe this is a flash in the pan, maybe it's not, but I guess it's just interesting to see like another Launchpad pop out and kind of do fairly well from a price action and like an activity on the platform perspective so quickly, when we've seen so many of them just kind of like be zeros. And maybe it's just too early. Like, I don't know. There was like was it boop.fun? I think that was like the kind of airdrop to KOL kind of Ponzi farm design. That one played out maybe as expected, right? Like a big spike and then kind of straight to
Don't
zero.
look at the chart. Yeah, don't look at the chart.
Yeah, but like this one, at least, I mean, it's not an airdrop to big KOLs. You had to buy into the ICO. So I don't know. Do you guys have any strong thoughts here? Is it just like people are, there's risk appetite in the markets and they're willing to like take a chance again? Because I feel like we saw this with Believe maybe a couple months ago. It kind of went on a pretty good run when it caught that like ICM narrative, and now it seems like Heaven. I mean, it's still pretty small. It's only been a few days, or I guess one day. We haven't really even seen much yet from the Launchpad itself. But it's kind of like catching a little bit of a bid as another Launchpad.
Yeah, I think people, myself included, are pretty tired of all the Launchpads. I mean, I did participate in the light sale, so that's kind of talking both sides of the sword there. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like to. They kind of remind me of remember, before Hyperliquid came out, every month there was kind of a new perp dex that would launch and have a points program and incentivize liquidity, and none of them ever gained any traction. It was kind of just a hop from one to the next to the next. So this reminds me a lot of that. As far as like the ICM thesis goes, the internet capital markets and kind of what the thesis was with Launchcoin and the Believe app, like like the theoretical vision of that like still makes all the sense in the world. But I think the market at this point, we're going on 6 to 9 to 12 months of kind of theorizing that. And I think the market is kind of just like, okay, there needs to be at least, kind of one thing that's launched on one of these endless platforms that actually kind of fits into this narrative and has some success. And then I think the market will be kind of have more appetite towards that narrative. But yeah, until that happens, like I think people are just kind of exhausted and tired of it.
Totally fair. I want to welcome real quick Dan Smith. Thank you for joining us, sir. I know you're a very busy man, so we're glad to have you on. We were just wrapping up some conversation around launch pads, and actually, it might be a good one to loop you into here. We haven't talked about Zora at all, but we're talking about the Heaven Dex, like ICO light sale, and then kind of like launch here. Tolk saying people are, maybe exhausted of the nth launch pad, but yet we're still seeing like, pop-ups of at least short-term success, right? Believe Launchcoin kind of like had a bit of a run. Heaven does an ICO and raises, $20 million or so. And Zora kind of retools their flywheel and is running quite significantly. I'm curious if you have any thoughts like on the current Launchpad setup, or if it's Zora specifically, or about Light. Where's your head at on Launchpads right now?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, gentlemen. Always an honor to be with the family at the table. I didn't participate in Heaven's token launch or ICO because I'm just exhausted. It's just like not interesting to me anymore personally. From the sake of just like the nth launch pad with like a marginally different system. However, I was curious. Like, they're backed by Coliseum. They're an interesting team. I mean, there should be something there. It's just like, all right, we're doing this again. That was my first reaction. Now, I think the other thing is, it's like, okay, you brought up Believe. Like, that one's fascinating that we're still talking about it, because volume is like, you don't like when you look at Launchpad volume collectively, it's not even on the chart. Revenue, not even on the chart, right? It's like 2 pixels big on the bottom of the screen. But the outsized attention from the rest of CT, like we love talking about that coin. And there's a really easy answer why. I actually think this ties into sort of the treasury companies, right? Is Pastor Nick puts himself on the timeline. He definitely seems to subscribe to the belief that all PR is good PR. Some days it definitely doesn't seem like that's the case, but the man is on the timeline, and I think that's why people still talk about it, because the product was pretty shitty. I think a lot of people were onto that really early, right? The first things that got like shown about that app were what you as the user see versus what they show disclaimer wise to the projects actually launching tokens. So to me, it was like, all right, right away, we already saw that this was just like not going to be a thing. And it's largely just a token launchpad, rather than, really fitting into the actual, real ICM narrative, if you will. When it comes to Zora is actually interesting. They actually ran a change on the game. Whether or not it'll work, TBD. I think the cat is very much still in the bag, if that's the case. But what they did was like try to say, all right, let's abstract the like true crypto part of this away from the user. When you're like, you don't have to pay gas for anything you do within the app. It's not called ETH. They called it Sparks. The UI is completely different, for better or for worse. It feels like a social application and not like a trading platform. And even what they also did was make it a platform, right? So now things like the Base app or other social focused applications can plug into this thing, use the actual coins protocol, which is a very interesting group of smart contracts. If you're into that sort of thing, paired with the Uniswap V4 hook. And now, they're able to generate revenue from somebody else leveraging their core technology, which I think is just an interesting play that, again, just kind of twisted the meta in a different way. I think some of those things played into their favor. Some of those things played against their favor. But yeah, to me, it was interesting. It was like, okay, it's not just like the nth, Launchpad. They're actually trying a different angle here. So that's what personally roped me in. And then also what roped me in right off the bat was the adverse reaction that all of crypto Twitter had to Zora. I was like, all right, this is immediately interesting. If everyone hates it, I'm in. Of course, my love-hate relationship with Zora has been pretty extreme, right? I loved it because everyone else hated it. And then they launched the For Fun token right as I was in the height of like going through the token transparency framework work. Like the whole goal of this initiative is for tokens to not be for fun and to actually carry some meaningful value. So that like really pissed me off. And I was like, throw it in the trash can, I'm out. And then it started like they obviously didn't stop building, and they introduced the flywheel piece, which was likely the case the whole time, or the game plan the whole time. But I actually put some utility around it. I still don't like that personally. I would like to see, you don't need value flowing back to the token day one, but there's equity entities behind the token, which just causes an inherent problem in my view. So yeah, I don't know. Kind of went on a long-winded rant on all three of those topics, but net, I think it's time to switch up the game. I think this was sort of like the death of NFTs in that regard, in that the game stayed the same and just like slowly burned into exhaustion. And there was definitely some ripples here and there, right? The launch of Blur really reignited things. But then there was just like, that was sort of the only change, right? And we've kind of seen some iterations, but I think Zora is like the first meaningful, switched ripple in the game, wave in the game, but we'll see if it's sticky.
Yeah, I guess at least to the stickiness point, what I find interesting in like the growth of usage on the platform is that ever since the base integration, the amount of posts and users from the base app have basically been up and to the right, whereas like activity from the native Zora platform has kind of, it's waxed and waned a little bit. Though obviously it's still up since prior to that event, but that rollout from base, like I don't know if they have that kind of captive user audience and enough interested individuals to like push some activity through there that should be meaningful. Maybe the only downside is just that like the platform has seen a lot of growth in terms of users and like posts and content coins, but the like trading on those coins has not kept pace with the growth of the posts themselves, which you can extend that out. Like, we've seen millions and millions of coins launch on Solana, and obviously the trading volume hasn't always gone up and to the right, but functionally, I guess you'd want to see some growth in the trading activity as well, alongside that, to really see kind of continued growth and value of the platform, if that's where like the fees and the value of the trading is generated.
The interesting thing on that is so there's like about a 3-ish% fee on trading Zora coins.
Yep.
And so that probably deters a vast majority of bot volume, which, relative to basically every other token trading platform out there, you have you have bips. You measure the fee in bips rather than full percentage points. And so that's one thing I was thinking about is like, there's certainly a lot of bot volume in the meme coin trenches. There's absolutely no doubt about that. There's been plenty of great data to point to in that regard. But I wonder if you strip that out of it, that definitely removes some runners. That just definitely makes the your terminal look a little different. Like I'm just curious, like the impact of removing bot volume from high fees. Maybe that's a lot of what you see. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder. I mean, that is sort of just like the game as it is today. So it's like if you strip that out, you're playing a different game at that point. Maybe so. I didn't even look at this chart until just now, but I find this interesting as well. That and it makes sense. Like I think if you're thinking about this rationally, but most of the volume is on the creator coin volume rather than the actual content coin volume, which makes a ton of sense, right? Because a creator can have 1,000 content coins, but they only have one creator coin, and the way that the flywheel kind of feeds on itself is that the content coins fuel the creator coins, and then the creator coins fuel the Zora coin to an extent. So that makes sense. But I don't know, for the platform, does this like...
Damn, honestly, I haven't looked at this chart in a couple of days, and I checked it basically every day while I was traveling. Don't tell my wife. And in that span where it was always below 5 million volume, and I was like, damn, like that needs to climb higher. But over the last 5-6 days, we actually have seen some of that. And then again, you plot this against like any other meme coin platform, you won't even see this volume. But again, because of the comparing within the ecosystem or within the protocol here, the last 5 days have actually looked pretty good. Now you've seen some natural trend in, we hit a Bitcoin all-time high. We got basically as close as you possibly could to an ETH all-time high. Tom Lee is smashing the bid. There's a lot of it. Like, I don't know, it could just be a general trend following here. But I don't know. That was my immediate reaction when you pulled this up, is like, damn, last 5 days have looked good.
Yeah. It's been looking good generally. Like, I feel like the broader trend here has been solidly up. Maybe just the bigger question for them is going to be, like, if I zoom this out, I don't know. We've consistently seen these spikes on Zora around the big announcements that they've had, or at least like the expectation. So like, I think back in April, that would have been like around airdrop kind of expectations before the token came out. There was a spike of activity, I think even before that, back in, what was it, February, maybe, when Jesse and Base started posting about Zora kind of relentlessly, and they did the Base, I forget, it was a really long ticker, but they did the Base content coin that ran to 10 mil or whatever and got the timeline excited. So we've consistently like seen these spikes, and I think what would be exciting to see is, this recent activity that you're excited about. Like, if they could maintain this level of activity consistently, rather than like for this to be another kind of spike, as a platform, I think that would be great to see, like a little bit more proof of the kind of, recurring usage of the platform and like recurring activity.
Agreed. Can you pull up the market caps chart towards the bottom?
Yeah. AgriCoin FTV?
Yeah. I mean, that looks pretty decent too. And that's actually a respectable size comparatively across the broader meme coin landscape. Obviously nothing near the multi-billion dollars of pump fund tokens, but I would put that in a different echelon. The bonk tokens ran up to about 8 or so, but they were kind of in that $200 million range for a while. So that's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I guess if we've got, I don't know, we'll see, but this seems to be the common thing now, right? Everyone is committing to buying the tokens on their platforms, and we've seen, I think, Base or Jesse, there was a post about, we're going to be supporting creators and coins on Zora. So maybe you see a little bit of like a bid for the ecosystem coins as well. I mean, Elon is doing this. We have it on. I mean, we know that some of the bonk big bonk accounts were doing this as well. It's just become like a pretty prominent thing. So there could be some kind of push from that activity as well.
Yeah, that's definitely becoming a meta now. And the first thing I thought of was like, Avalanche wasn't wrong, man. They were just early.
Yeah, it very much gives 2021 like liquidity incentive, like big ecosystem initiative, Avalanche Rush. I mean, I think I want to say almost every chain, like all of the Alt-L ones back then, basically did a big ecosystem like incentive program back during 2021. And this, at least for Launchpads, this kind of seems to be that moment for them.
The next big thing is creator subnets.
Why have your own coin, man?
Every creator will have their own chain.
Exactly.
Think about the flywheel. That'd be an insane Launchpad platform.
The flywheel could be very real. One thing that's kind of been interesting to me about Zora is their lack of messaging, I guess, around like the flywheel part. I feel like that's like you have to do a bit of digging to find that. Like, am I wrong on that? Have they been pretty upfront about it? Because I heard about it through literally just like the Telegram group.
They made a big post, an announcement, like when they changed the model. I don't know that it's gotten that much talk since then, but like they had a little circle diagram of like posts, creators, Zora coin, and like quite literally a circular diagram, like a wheel.
Yeah.
Jacob, the founder, has been pretty vocal about it. I will say, but I mean, if you aren't following him, then it's up. You're in the algo's hands at that point.
Here it
Fair
is.
enough.
So that's pinned. You can see their like little flywheel draw, but like onboard people, more creators means more opportunities. Post fuel creators, and then all of that fuels the circle, which is the Zora icon. So Zora coin. Yeah, this is kind of like their diagram about it. You can find the details from their like original post.
What's the top creator coin market cap? Is it still? It's like sub 10 mil, right?
Uh,
Do you know, Dan? Is it that horse coin?
Around there.
Are you talking about content coin? Definitely below 10 mil. Creator is probably crawled higher. I think the easiest way, honestly, is just to look at the app. We have a few tagged. If you go to that market cap chart and then toggle to top creators.
Oh yes, sir.
But it might not be the current top creators. Let me check.
ZXBT.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fake Taxi was up there for a while. And Visualizing,
Yeah, right
yeah,
around
VV's been
10.
up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were over 10. ZXBT was over 10 for a bit, assuming that this is it up to date on all of them. The top content would be interesting as well. Yeah, that basis for everyone coin, which is the one I mentioned back from a few months ago. That base coin is still, that's actually kind of crazy that is still consistently just the largest content coin on the platform. And Horse has really been trying to get its way up there.
It'll be interesting. I mean, I think Dan mentioned it, but eventually, like, you kind of want some more volume and higher market caps there for the flywheel to continue. So it'll be interesting to see if those can keep grinding higher. And I think it'll be interesting to see now that a little bit of weakness in ETH here. I think Zora was kind of the clear cut like highest beta play to ETH. So I think that played a decent role in the run that Zora had. It was obviously overextended. Any coin that goes kind of parabolic like that kind of gets to that point. But I mean, the metrics all look good, and I mean there is definitely something there. But it goes back to what we were talking about with the Launchpads earlier. Like I think Zora did a good job in differentiating themselves as much as they could. With kind of again like the nth Launchpad type thing. But then that next step is taking a little further and back to like the ICM thesis. Like everybody's kind of waiting around for something to actually take hold. Like the theory of it, the idea of it all makes sense. But Zora's as of now kind of teetering on the edge of just kind of, in my opinion, being like another Launchpad type thing that has good demand and is exciting for a month or two, but having the sustainability of the users and the creator coins and kind of doing something new and unique with that, that's to be determined.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Maybe there's like a similarity here in when you look at ICM and when you look at like even these creator coins, is that with ICM, there's like this hope that people will start using that as a means to raise funds to like do startups and other things. But with the way that like the market is today, it's like if you're actually a great founder and you have a great idea and like you can go out and get funding for it, like it really, you don't have a need to go into the ICM world and like launch a coin. It's like unnecessary for you if you're one of those killers and you can go out and go and raise 10, 20 million and get a startup off the ground. Like it just doesn't really even make sense, maybe even from a reputation or a risk standpoint. Whereas people who might struggle to do so kind of have that as a potential option that they could leverage. Not saying that like everyone who's going to go and launch there is like a scammer per se, but more so just like I could see a very swift like mood change about like an ICM platform if like a very notable founder or startup launched a coin, right? Like it'd be unsurprising if one of these big accounts or names on like Twitter that is raising 30 million from A16Z, if instead they did a coin, like that would get people riled up. And I think in the same way, like if a very massive creator made a Zora account and started posting content coins on there, like it would get people riled up. But it's very much like this chicken egg problem of like you want someone like that to hop onto the platform because it would drive a ton of attention and excitement, but they're not really like incentivized to do it. The returns from doing so don't really like make sense relative to the system today. So you kind of need like a trendsetter to go ahead and do that. And to your point, Tolks, it feels like that's what people would like to see, and they're kind of like waiting around to see if that happens. Is the vibe that I get.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I mean, I just agree with all that, and I mean to that chicken and egg problem too. Like you said, I don't know. The incentives are partially there, and then they're partially not. And I mean, we've seen, kind of with like the meme coin space, like people launching their own tokens. Like at some point, like the broader market, like things are kind of out of your hand on how the token does, and the amount of backlash you can get for doing stuff like this is almost not worth the cost of doing it in the first place. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see moving forward.
Perhaps a hard pivot, but did you guys see that Aave borrowing on USDT and USDC has been ramping up again and driving home another spike in the withdrawal queue on ETH?
It was at like 16% this morning on USDT.
Yeah, it's at 8 right now. I'm sure it probably wicked higher at one point. I don't know if Justin Sun got bored again and started withdrawing, but.
Well, did you see? I wanted to tweet this out and float it as just an idea. Did you guys see? It was like this within the same hour that BTC hit new all-time highs. That like Bloomberg report came out about like kind of like doxing his like or some article about his holdings and stuff, and then it came out that he was suing them because of proprietary information and that he didn't want like his financial holdings known.
And is he suing him about what was released or what is soon to be released?
About what is soon to be released. He's pushing back on Bloomberg they've been working with him since I think like February to get like an accounting of his like net worth to kind of just like he kind of like signed up for this and kind of backed himself into a corner because he didn't think that it was going to be like made public. And so he's suing them about that now. And it was just kind of, I don't know, maybe like a little tinfoil hat, but like the price action we've had since I saw the first tweet about that, I'm like, I wonder if Justin, I don't know, he just got his hands in, kind of everything. And if he has to shore up some things because of, stuff coming out, it was just kind of, it was kind of interesting. And I hadn't really seen anybody mention it. So I'm kind of just floating this out there as a wild conspiracy.
Definitely tinfoil hat conspiracy, but I fucking love it. I think something here.
But it's just interesting timing. It was within the hour. Yeah, the first report I saw of him filing the suit was like within the hour of the highs.
The timing is funny. I'm reading the article though, and it seems like he was just being a bit silly in regards to how he approached So I guess Bloomberg wanted to include him in their Bloomberg Billionaires Index, and they like had detailed information about his particular holdings. And maybe they had like a soft agreement to not disclose details of like what he actually owns, but just like what the round number is at the top, like 5 billion or 6 billion or whatever. But I guess they put together a profile that like broke down specifically like, oh, he owns this much crypto, this much whatever. And he took issue with that. It seems a bit softball, if I'm being honest. Like he's a bit upset about the particulars, rather than the actual like them filing data.
That's what he wants you to think.
Yeah, he's bringing down the market, man. This is.
Oh, what were we on before that? I just sidetracked us so bad.
Sorry, Dan. Did you want to go somewhere?
No, not really. I just it was checking Beacon Chain because that got hot. I don't know, back in like July. It's like everyone freaking out. Oh, they're unstaking. But it was obviously tied to the Aave loop, right? You're trying to just farm ETH yield. You loop it aggressively, and in that process, you have to obviously be very cognizant of the cost to borrow. So I don't know. It's just really interesting when you see this happened about a month ago, and it's happening again now. And again, to be clear, this is not like a risk to ETH thing. A lot of this already immediately gets restaked. You're just capturing the ARB when staked ETH trades at a discount. So I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of interesting to follow along whenever this happens. And it is also crazy that one man's actions can stem and like send this like shockwave through DeFi, which then hits the staking queue. And it's like a we're at a 13-day, almost 2-week window to unstake and about a one week lag on staking. So the entry queue. I don't know. It's just crazy how it does kind of make you wonder if it's like what can be done to strengthen that, maybe make it a little bit more resilient or less open to market dynamics. Obviously, for the ETFs, they deeply care if there's a huge lag or you have to take a haircut on staking assets. But it does feel like we're also pretty close to seeing what the regulators think about that. And the SEC has been very vocal that like liquid staking tokens aren't securities. Maybe they could be leveraged by some of these staking ETFs. I think the Bloomberg guys have said they expect the Solana regular ETF to come before the staking ETFs. And so they also pegged that regular Solana ETF for October. So maybe towards the back end of the last couple of months of the year is when we'll see potential staking ETFs come online. I'm certainly not an expert there, though, so I'm not sure.
No, I think that sounds about right. I mean, the SEC's clarity on all of this has just been amazing, and Hester obviously continues to be amazing. But yeah, I mean, we'll see those ETFs. I think they did essentially all but confirm they will be in October. It'll be interesting to see the staking ETFs after that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, all that stuff with the queue, like you said, it's never anything to like necessarily worry about, but it is interesting. Like, I mean, you're talking, massive sums of money, and it is always kind of funny. Like, I mean, even back in, 2020, 2021, really since DeFi started evolving, it's kind of just been like, Justin Sun and some other large entities too, but like, they want to shift some portion of their portfolio, and like the ripple effects it can have through DeFi is always pretty fascinating to watch.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think a lot of the unstaking right now though isn't it like people that want to do like in-kind contributions to DATs, whether new or existing, because like that's a ton of ETH. And then also on the Solana staking ETF front, like that's an interesting thing because like the one that is currently live, which is like the Rex Osprey one, that's like a mixture of like staking and vanilla, if you want to call it vanilla. I don't know, native soul. But yeah, I think it's likely that we see probably a mixed bag of those. I guess it's like, what will the larger issuers be doing? Like, what's Fidelity going to be doing? And then when BlackRock eventually rolls around, what are they going to be doing? I do think like there's always like advantages for them to use like LSTs to, have like, especially on the Ethereum side where you're not having to wait like 3 days for the withdrawals to actually process. And then obviously on Solana it's much quicker, but also you can use like LSTs on that front.
On
Yeah.
that first point, so there's about 3.1 billion. It's about 700-ish K of ETH unstaking right now. It's about 3.1 billion, and you're actually seeing a lot of it again just immediately get restaked. If you like plot these two charts together, you see a good lag. Danny, I'll send this over to you. Maybe you want to share a screen here. But I'm at, with the exception of the Adam Back one for Bitcoin and the Jack Muller's one, XXI or 21. A lot of these things, they do have in-kind contributions, but the size is like, on a relative basis, the size is sort of trivial in some regard, right? Like the SWE one, for example, it's about 300 million, about 100 million in kind, I believe it was. So it's like, okay, like 100 million is not a small number, but then you see, just in the last week, SharpLink has added another $1 billion of ETH. Or BitMine added $2 billion of ETH in the last week. So on just a sheer size basis, the in-kind contributions are actually relatively small relative to just the spot buying going on. Once these things do kind of spin up the flywheel of volume, turns into dripping shares onto the market to raise cash, turning to buying more ETH, turning to getting more attention for climbing up this leaderboard and selling more shares and so on.
Yeah, I like that. Before we dive into this topic, because I think we're going to get deeper into the DATs, here in a second. Let's go ahead 1 second. I want to do one last shout out for today's sponsors to the show. Aptos, with nearly 400 million in BTC assets on chain, supported by a secure, fast, and affordable MVM environment. Aptos has become the BTCFi growth chain. Aptos users can now earn yield on their Bitcoin via Echo's ABTC and OKX's XBTC without the typical bridge risks and high fees. With support from Echo, OKX, and Stacks' SBTC, Aptos is the place to go for best-in-class yield on Bitcoin. Appreciate the support, Aptos, as well as Algorand. Algorand's AlgoKit 3.0 includes all the tools and open source resources you need to unleash the power and performance of the Algorand blockchain. Access a resilient network with an instant finality, consistently high throughput and low fees, and layer 1 features like atomic swaps and native assets. No smart contracts required. Whether you're building DeFi protocols, enterprise solutions, or next-gen dApps, AlgoKit has all the tools you need to build faster, safer, and smarter. Thank you to Algorand and Aptos. Let's get back to it. Dan, we were looking at. Did you have more to say about?
No, I did not. I was literally just perusing the charts as I hopped on this morning, and
something that was on my mind though before we get fully into Tom Lee's massive size into ETH is I do wonder, do we feel that the ETFs play any role here in like the structuring around? So, like for example, we didn't really see ETH DATs come to the forefront until post ETH ETFs kind of had already made their way onto the market and started to see some inflows. I don't know if that's really meaningful, and obviously there already are some smaller or decently sized SOL DATs, but I do wonder if the sort of regulatory approval plus just maybe connection to institutions in Wall Street around the asset, in a post ETF environment, make the potential to raise for a very large DAT more appealing. I'm curious your thoughts there. Do we see SOL ETFs go live and then you give it a couple months, see some inflows, and then maybe the picture on Wall Street looks a little bit more attractive, and then at that point you have a Tom Lee of Solana step into play, and you see a very big kind of DAT come to the forefront for the SOL or even other assets, right? This could be XRP, this could be other tokens down the line. It almost feels like maybe that's a kind of a big step in the direction of gaining some favor with maybe the larger institutions or just institutional interest.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a step of legitimacy at the absolute bare minimum, right? That's just all right, we can trust you for if you've made it through that process. I think there's no doubt about that. But there actually might be something deeper there, though. So if you remember the Bitcoin-driven rally at the end of Q4 last year was largely during the time, not largely, it was during the time when Saylor was pumping in a total of $20 billion of net buys through MicroStrategy of obviously acquiring more Bitcoin. And during that time, the ETF inflows for Bitcoin were extremely hot, right? This was when everybody was posting them every single day. Actually, I can pull this up here and kind of highlight exactly what I mean by that. But I think it was very interesting that, at that time, let's see, share screen. Again, you kind of had that two wave effect of the, sorry, I'm really trying to multitask here. It's not working. Share screen, window, no, Chrome tab. There we go. Okay, if you want to throw that up, Danny. But yeah, it was just super interesting that at that time, right, we had Saylor accumulating, and then we also had the ETFs ripping. And I don't know if there's anything mechanical in the relationship between the two there, but I do just find that interesting that while Saylor was bidding, you also had these massive inflows of multi-billion-dollar, or north of $1 billion, multiple north of $1 billion days. And at that time, right, all the Bitcoin maxis were dunking all the ETH maxis because of the size comparisons and whatnot. But then you fast forward to today, and we kind of see that role flipping, right? We have now, instead of Saylor massively bidding Saylor massively bidding Bitcoin, we have Tom Lee and Joe Lubin massively bidding ETH. And the ETFs are very interestingly following that. So it does seem, I don't know if there's anything like truly mechanical there. Like, I really don't know that what would be causing that, or if it's just a broader attention or adoption of like, hey, these guys are smashing by. Like, why would I not go smash by through my brokerage account as well? That's tough for me to say, but again, I just kind of thought it was very interesting that it goes one for one there. So to your point about like, is there a relationship there? Maybe this is just, correlation is not causation and there's nothing here, but looking at the past moments for Bitcoin and ETH, there actually was a little bit of a relationship between the DAT buying and the ETF accumulation.
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes you wonder if, I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't suspect like Saylor himself or these big companies to be buying into the ETFs via their exposure if they're getting committed like native tokens, or just purchasing like OTC in bulk from whoever on chain to build their holdings. But I don't know. I wonder with like maybe the pipe deals and some of the other activity, like maybe these guys, they do those deals, but then they also like get exposure to the underlying, through the ETFs as well. Or it could just be very much like a following trade that's happening where whether it's retail or anybody else is just piling into these vehicles after seeing the big purchase statements come out from Saylor and from Tom Lee.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, but again, just like another way to visualize that is, here's the start of October. There was about $15 billion, $15.5 billion in MicroStrategy was the only DAT at that time, and then by the end of December, that 15 billion became 43 or 44 billion. And of course, Bitcoin massively outperformed during this period of time. Markets ripped. Everyone was kind of in that euphoria heading into the election. And then now you see a very similar story, right? We've seen, north of $6 billion flow into DATs. Yeah, this week has been insane. Obviously, we jumped from 6 to $11 billion of inflows. And then just today, SharpLink announced another slug that they accrued since the last update, which I believe was about 100. Yeah, so they have 728. And prior to this announcement, they had just about 600,000 ETH. So about another 100,000 ETH. So they've been accumulating very aggressively as well.
It's interesting as well that I think the ETH spot ETFs went live basically like a year ago off of the start of some of those accumulations. Not that there's anything necessarily specific about 1 year, and Saylor's been buying Bitcoin for far longer than the BTC ETF has been out there, but it does make me wonder if there's just something there like potentially correlated there around, the ETF goes live and then that it makes something more of a compelling story, at least to sell the vision a little bit to the street or to Main Street or whoever on the product. Because we know that Tom Lee and whoever else, I mean, they're going on on finance talk shows and espousing the vision, which has been drumming up additional support outside of their own, like, share selling and then ETH buying.
Yeah, their stated goal of Tom Lee is to hit 5%, the alchemy of 5%, baby. And he's just shy of 1% today. So by next Monday, he'll release an announcement and we'll be north of 1%, which is also crazy to think about. That went from 0 to 100. It felt like it really in July 7th. We're at August 15th, a month and a week. Absolutely insane growth.
It's nuts. It's actually like it's pretty ludicrous. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as for the correlations there, like, I mean, one of the simplest explanations for a lot of things is like green candles beget green candles, and a lot of FOMO and chasing. I do think between the ETFs and the debt treasury companies, with the CME and the futures basis, like there's a lot of kind of exotic ways to hedge there, so that might play a little bit of a role in kind of the growth. Once you have the ETFs, you have a lot more easy, accessible ways to hedge out kind of things if you want to. So that might play a role in that too. Just kind of that institutional CME liquidity is just I don't know. Once it's there, it makes the size that you can have a lot better. But yeah, Tom Lee's, I mean, I don't know, this size, this is just it's pretty insane. It feels like we're kind of hitting that first kind of plateau where everybody kind of looks at themselves and is kind of saying like, this is pretty insane. But yeah, I mean, there'll be a second wave, in my opinion. Like I said, I think we're kind of at that first level where everybody kind of looks around and is just like, this is not necessarily sustainable in any way. But I think it'll kind of play out where maybe we go down some more, and then everybody's kind of like, oh, it was so easy to call the top in these treasury companies, and then there'll be kind of that second wave of life is kind of how I'm thinking about it now, and how many waves of life that they have in them. We'll see. I mean, a lot of it is out of their hands. If TradFi wants to go down too, I'm sure that'll affect overall volatility and volume and just kind of sentiment around things, and then they can't monetize the stock as easily. So that kind of is a feedback loop that feeds on itself. But for now, I mean, the immediate future, like they have no problem monetizing it as of now. We'll see, a couple weeks, month from now, we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, as of now, I mean, it's full steam ahead.
Yeah, full steam ahead. I mean, so you mentioned the monetization aspect there, and I'm certainly not an expert in this. I spend all my time in crypto, but this has been a leading driver of crypto. So obviously, I've been diving in here. And if anyone listening to this is like, nope, dude, you're an idiot, here's how it actually works, I am all ears. Please shoot me a message, a DM, a reply, and call me an idiot publicly. It all works. But my understanding of how this works is you set up these ATM facilities where they're basically a free permission, or not free permission, you have to get it approved by the board and the shareholders and whatnot, but you have the ability to issue authorized shares into the market. And what that mechanically means is basically they have a provider that will work with the market makers making the book, and you will literally drip new shares into the market to buyers, right? So if you go into buy, instead of taking an order off the offer, you quite literally purchase a new share and that's how it releases them into circulation. And so the way that you sort of have to do this, if you just dumped a bunch of supply onto the market, as we well know in crypto, and especially in the trenches in the meme coin space, yeah, you make an impact on price. And so the recommended path forward is something around 2.5 to 5% of daily volume you can basically replace with this new share issuance without totally dampening price. And you've seen these guys issue much more aggressively than that. So the SharpLink team has put out some really detailed data for us. They've given us the weekly ATM number of issues shared, a number of shares issued, and the net proceeds in dollars from issuing those shares. And of course, you can track the trading volume as well. And we see they've actually ranged at about an average of 6%, as low as 2.5% some weeks, and about as high as 10% on other weeks, on how aggressively they've issued new shares onto the market. BM&R is not giving us this level of detail, but you can kind of back into it based on the amount of ETH they acquired over the last week in dollar terms. And then, of course, again, you can grab the trading volume. And we've seen that ratio go as high about 11 or 12%. So both of these guys are just absolutely hammering shares into all of this volume that they've been getting, which again continues to go up and to the right. Last week was, yet again a higher volume week. If we look at Bitmine and SBET specifically, kind of zoom in here, you'll notice that they've had insane volume pops, and ATNF as well. They kind of like just kind of getting off the ground. It's the ETHZilla one, if you're familiar. They're trying to basically do everything on chain, which is interesting. But again, when you are running this amount of volume, the numbers that you can raise with this share dripping is pretty ridiculous. I expect another multi-$100 million week from Tom Lee and Bitmine this week, right? They've had a couple of days where they likely raised over $400 million per day. So yeah, I think we'll be north of the $1 billion purchase going into next week. So the question for me is like, yes, I completely agree with you, Tolks, right? If broader markets pull down, then I think that's of course going to start driving some issues here. But as long as they can keep driving attention around these stocks, it feels like they're going to continue to be able to drive volume and continue to be able to issue new shares, which means they're going to continue to be able to buy more ETH. And that's kind of like, I think this is probably the most important number, is the usage of these ATM facilities on a weekly basis and how aggressively they're being able to do this. Because once that does start to dry up, that's a good indication we're going to be losing our strongest buyer in the market. And Saylor has already said, hey, if MNAV is below 2.5, we're not going to be tapping that facility. And right now they're at about like a 1.7 range. All right, so they're not buying. Then if we lose Tom Lee, we lose SBET, they're not buying. And it's like you start to wonder who's left. So that's kind of the interesting thing I'm looking at. So yeah, if there's one number in the industry I'm tracking today, unfortunately it's an off-chain number, but it's the usage of these ATM facilities and the trend at which they're issuing. I think that's basically going to tell us where we are in market.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all that. And I think before you hopped on, there was something that I mentioned about just kind of the overall price action that we've seen recently too. I mean, obviously we had the really aggressive run up to new highs. But Saylor on the earning calls, like just, making it clear that they're not tapping the ATM for common stock anymore. Like that was something that I think a lot of sharp people on CT kind of noted as, kind of a sea change shift and kind of the market structure that Bitcoin has been used to for, years now. And like you said, I mean, we're talking, the numbers of the size, was it 20 billion last year? Like these are, they're massive numbers. So I agree that, the market right now paying attention to those ATM offerings are one of the key things. But, I mean, you can bid up kind of as much ETH as you want, but I'm kind of, one of the things I've been thinking through a lot this week is with Saylor he's not out of the market, but the size that we're used to, I think is significantly less moving forward. And it's just kind of like, where does, the next marginal buyer for BTC come from? And again, you can shove as much money as you want into ETH over, a month, 2 month, 3 month period. But eventually if BTC is kind of, just dragging along, there's only so high that you can push ETH without Bitcoin climbing higher. That's why, kind of earlier this week, like seeing Bitcoin make new highs was incredible, because I was kind of concerned about just the overall state of the market with BTC kind of stalling out at like 120, while alts and ETH BTC just, I mean, on an absolute tear. And I was kind of just like, if BTC doesn't make the next leg, then, this might kind of be it. Not necessarily, not like, the bear markets that we've had of old necessarily, but just, market cool down for a while. And then BTC made that leg and then instantly kind of puked it. So I'm kind of back to that stance right now. Like, you can raise all this money for ETH and other DATs, but if BTC isn't playing along, like there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Something I saw that I kind of pondered a little bit was I saw the question asked like, how much of the supply of these tokens does like DAT ownership become almost like a risk? And not that I'm saying that we need to talk about like 33% or 50% and like taking over the network or something along those lines, but more so just to the point of like, if these guys are the big buyer, or maybe like at some point they're kind of like the only buyer, like where does that become like really apparent or like potentially a question mark? Like if Saylor had 10, 15, 20% of Bitcoin, like I don't know. I feel like you'd have to be throwing out some question marks there. Like if this guy's the only guy that's ever buying it, and he decides he doesn't want to buy, like who am I going to sell to, type of thing. I don't know. Do you guys have a thought there? It's just kind of like a hypothetical thing.
Are you saying you sell your tokens? I thought we just I thought they just went out forever.
Just hypothetically, like let's say Tom Lee acquired
what's
25% of ETH. Like I don't know. Is that like, is it almost more of a risk than a positive at that point? Like, are you still holding your ETH, very excited that he's going to raise his ownership to 50%? Like at some point you have to fulfill like if they're going to just endlessly bid the thing off of like monetizing the retail like purchasers of their stocks, naturally you would have to seek an exit at some point. Otherwise they're going to, the only other exiter would be them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the major trade right now. I think it's like people are going to keep bidding until these folks can't. And then when they can't, we'll probably sell off. And I think you see that in kind of smaller examples, but it just makes sense. Like it's just kind of, there's a lot of momentum. I think a lot of people are going to get behind it. I also think a lot of the ETF flows are like either some are lagging and then some are trying to front run some of these like raises, if that's what you want to call it. But yeah, I think it's like very likely that happens. Like kind of hard to see why that wouldn't be the case. And so, yeah, I think like the game's going to keep getting played until that point. Side point of what you brought up, Danny, though, of like, Tom and like the ETH DATs or whatever, like owning like 33% of the network. I wonder at what point the .eth concerners really get, stumped by that one, because right now they've been cheerleading these things pretty hard. Seems that they might have left their, values like to the side for now, because ultimately they're being aligned by the price going up. So
they love him until he tips 33%. Then they hate him.
Do we know how BitMine is staking? Have they disclosed if they're using a single provider or what that looks like?
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen any Arkham entities for them either. Like no single entity at least matches up for the exact size. So I assume they're also probably using some sort of custody solution right now. There's like Coinbase custody or someone else. But yeah, curious if anyone knows.
Yeah, I don't know for them specifically, but I think that's definitely something that's worth caring about for the sake of this conversation, right? Because if they do hit 5%, and then a single entity gets an additional 5% boost to your stake, I think that's like definitely a thing to be discussing. What can you actually do with that is sort of the knock-on question, but it's interesting because SharpLink is using Liquid Collective, which is shout out to Mari Schmidt and that team. That's literally what they built for this moment, and it's cool to actually see them land one of the two biggest potential clients for what they were going after. That said, the way that system is set up is there's 5 entities that run the validators for that stake. So that one's like a little bit more diversified than a single operator, but all 5 of those entities already operate existing stake, right? So if you're trying to say, all right, what's like the true entity count within the top 33% of Ethereum stake, that would all be flowing back into entities that are already in that top 33%, rather than spinning up a new one that has like an addition. You're adding additional entity, so it probably is from a purely number standpoint, increasing the concentration of stake. But I think it's a little bit inevitable when you have buyers of that size, right? Like how else are you realistically going to do it? But I think it kind of comes full circle back to the Lido thing of like, rewind 2 years ago, they were like this evil entity. But at the end of the day, they do have 40 or so operators behind their stake. So yeah, it is kind of to see that. And then I guess the counterpoint of someone doing it in a very like ETH aligned way, if you will, I think it's BTCS. They are using Rocket Pool validators. So they're spinning up their, I don't know exactly the process that they're doing. I don't know if they're spinning up their own validators through Rocket Pool or if they're just staking to existing validators. But yeah, they're really trying to spread their stake out across a larger validator or entity count, which is pretty interesting to see. Now they're significantly smaller than SharpLink or BitMine, but just interesting to see the kind of spread of different approaches there.
Yeah, good points. I do like the comments. Like, I don't know. I do feel like your typical ETH concern or probably is not. They're not too concerned right now. Asset price goes up. That's always good. So we'll take a little bit of asset concentration if it means number go up for the time being. I mean, and I can't imagine. You can get to 3% in short order, but to actually acquire like for one of these or for like a combination of these companies to actually acquire like 30% of all of the tokens. I mean, Sailor's been doing this for years and they only have 3% of supply. So yeah, I mean, it would push it. It would almost likely due to the way that their execution is, and they literally like market by the token with like no regard for anything. Every time they raise cash, they would be pushing the price like to astronomical levels to even do so. At that point, you would be like questioning. Probably if you're a longtime ETH holder, I don't know, maybe you think it's going to 79 trillion or whatever the estimate is, but
that would be bearish. But the other thing is like there's I don't think you'd want to do that because you would be inviting those questions,
Exactly. Yeah. For it to happen like so quickly that it's just like actively pushing the price up, like, massive percentages, like on a consistent basis to achieve that amount of ownership. Like it would be stupid to the extent that like you'd be the one left holding the bag and had paid a big premium to hold it, which doesn't make any sense. So far more likely that we see like a little bit of a leveling off like Sailors has, where he's still incrementally buying Bitcoin, but he obviously can't buy 1% every quarter anymore. It just becomes too much of an obstacle to move that far. Awesome. I don't know, any other big takeaways, guys? I'm happy to cut it off short, or I guess not really short. We went for a good amount of time here, but it is a Friday, and down here in downtown Ohio, the weather is quite nice outside. It'd be great to go and touch some grass. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, I guess we're studying Tom Lee's girth. We're keeping an eye on his size in the ETH marketplace. That is the big story right now. How high will ETH go? How much will ETH DATs purchase? And a bunch of people seem to be along for the ride. Any other takeaways?
No. How's things going with Kairos, Ian? What's the most interesting thing you guys are working on?
Things are going well. We've just been adding more networks. We're looking at Fogo as one.
GFogo.
GFogo. Love Fogo.
Fogo Friday.
It's Fogo Friday. Yes.
Fogo Fridays.
Exactly.
They should pay us for that. That'd be crazy. No. Continue. Sorry.
Hard to put a price on Fogo Friday. Yeah, things are going well. A little tired right now, but yeah, things have been going well.
It's
Not
late
too
for
much
you.
to
You
add
look
right
like
now.
you're in an undisclosed like Mediterranean location or something along those lines.
Something like that. Yeah. Somewhere with no AC.
Oh, that's tough.
That helps narrow it down.
Yeah, only a little bit. All right, guys, we can we'll call it there. I'm feeling the fatigue from Ian right now. I'm feeling a little sweaty myself. Gonna have to go crank the AC another point maybe. Thank you for coming on, chatting all things going on in the markets, and thanks to all of you guys out there watching, listening. We will see you all again next time. Until then, peace out.
Fogo Fridays.
Fogo Friday.
Fridays.